Hey there, Internet people, and welcome back to Green Wing Gaming. It's Friday again, which means it's time for another Let's Play. And today we are continuing our playthrough of the Rangers of Shadowdeep core rulebook missions. We are in the final scenario of Mission 2, the Beacon Tower. This mission, last scenario was called Tor Varden, the lower level, so this final scenario has been imaginatively named Tor Varden, the upper level. But we have reached the end of the second mission. This will be the final playthrough where we get to find out what the nefarious forces of the Shadowdeep have in mind for this tower, why they went out of their way to attack it, and why they've been butchering what's left of the garrison. If you need a quick reminder of what happened in the last scenario, our heroes arrived at the tower, successfully cleared out the entire lower level, killed quite a few gnolls, and did so shockingly well. We did really well. We literally ended up taking no damage after the end of scenario heal. And yeah, we cleared everyone out. We rescued several prisoners, two of which, a man-at-arms and a faithful warhound, have joined our party and will be continuing with us into this final scenario. Other than that, there's not a lot to recall other than the mission went very well. Nobody got taken out of action. And I guess at the end of the last video, I did say I was going to be giving a third spell to my caster. I'm not going to do that. Yes, I have the recruitment points to do it, but it just feels a little cheesy to say, oh, hey, we're frantically fighting our way through a tower, but somehow our wizard had time to stop, read a spell book, and learn a whole new spell. So he won't be getting that third new spell until after this scenario, assuming he survives. And other than that, the only thing of note is that our rogue, Lady Gwyneth, will be sitting the scenario out as part of how she gained us some extra XP in the previous scenario. But yeah, the only other real thing I have to say briefing you for this is that if this is your first video in the series, if you haven't watched any of the previous games, I would recommend going back and watching those, then coming back to this one, just so you have a little more context. But, you know, as long as you're okay jumping into the middle of a story, you're more than welcome to watch. And hopefully this will be a good game. I'm excited to see what's gonna happen in this final scenario. I hope you guys are as well. But yeah, other than that, before we hop into it, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder that this is a very new channel. This is only the 5th gameplay video that should be going up on the channel. So I've been doing this for about a month at time of recording, and at this stage in the game, any level of interaction really helps out, helps praise the fickle god Algorithmo. So you've already done me a huge favor by clicking on this video. I am hoping I can maybe ask you kind, benevolent, and dare I say very handsome strangers on the internet to maybe hit the like button, subscribe, because if you subscribe, you'll get to find out how the rest of the campaign plays out. We're going to be playing a bunch more missions in Rangers, and we are going to be branching out into other games as soon as I can get the audio situation figured out. But yeah, so I hope to see you guys in future videos. I would love to know what you guys think about the campaign so far in the comments down below. But other than that, we're playing the last scenario of Mission 2, so let's just get into it. And here we are at the start of turn 1, and let's give you guys a quick look at the board. Here we are at the very peak of Tor Varden, at the highest lookout point of the Beacon Tower, where our heroes have finally mounted the stairs, gasping for breath and weary from their fight. They find shadowy figures, a pair of shadow knights, and their gnoll companions, preparing to sacrifice a priest of Alador on a pyre to their foul masters, with archers walking the outer gantry-way of the tower. Now, the rules of the scenario state that these archers can never come within the walls of the inner portion of the upper level. They just have to stay out there, but they can walk to the doors or the kind of gaps in the wall and take shots at our guys. So we are going to have some enemy fire coming in. But crucially, the point of the mission, the goal, is for us to save the priest atop the pyre and to vanquish the forces of the Shadowdeep. The scenario does also state that our heroes we can only start with 3 of our party members in this corner where it's meant to be the stairs. Didn't have anything to mark the stairs with, guys. I hope you'll forgive me. But they are going to have to come through here, wipe out all of the enemies, and try to save the priest, and the rest of our party is going to join us at the start of turn 2. But we start off now in the Ranger phase, and we're just going to group activate with everyone. We're going to have Tywin just kind of move forward like this. Kind of play this a little cautiously, because something I should tell you about these Shadow Knights. The Shadow Knights are honestly terrifying. They have, not only do they just have amazing stats, they have an armor of 12, you know, they have a fight of +4, so right away, they're easily a match for Tywin. They also have 14 wounds, so almost as many as Tywin, but more than that, they have partial immunity to non-magic damage, so any damage done to them that is not magic, they cut it in half, and they do that before they apply their armor, so like, if you rolled an 18, if your damage was 18, they would cut that down to a 9. And then their armor of 12 would just ignore the damage. So these guys, with their 14 wounds, could be unbelievably tanky. So these guys could be a huge problem for our merry band of heroes, which is fortunate that we have literally one guy that can do magic damage. Having looked back at some of the optional rules, or not, some of the options for random events in previous scenarios, we could have found stuff that would have given us magic attacks, we just failed to do so. And unfortunately, these guys are gonna take some doing to put down, so hopefully Archie is up to the task of putting them down with some very accurate spellfire. But let's find out. So Archibald here is just gonna use his first action to come over here. Bryn is just gonna stay where he is. Tywin's gonna burn his second action. He's not gonna do anything for his second action. We want to try and stay a little bit close together. Archie here is going to fire off his fireball spell. Now, for those of you who don't remember, his fireball spell does not pick a target. He picks a point on the map, and everything within 3 inches takes I believe, a +3 magical attack. So he's going to aim right here behind the Shadow Knight and tag everybody around there. So he's going to try and nuke this whole band of baddies right off the start. So let's start by targeting this Shadow Knight with the blue sword, glowing blue sword. See what we can do. Archie is going to have a magic attack of +3 versus the Knight's fight of +4. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so Archie actually starts off pretty strong because he rolled a 17, becomes a 20. The Shadow Knight rolls a 16, becomes a 20, but because it's a tie, he still takes the damage. So yeah, and because Archie got his final score to a 20, he gains a +5 damage modifier for critting. That is a special rule for the heroes. The baddies do not gain the critical hit feature in this game because the guy who wrote the rules was trying to do us all solid, I guess. But so Archie here is going to have a final damage score of 25, and it doesn't get cut in half. He just applies the full damage because it is magical. Now, it's only going to be 13 damage because the Knight does still get his armor of 12. But that means our Shadow Knight is down to a single wound from the first attack. Go, Archibald. I will use your full name because you just earned it, bud. That is going to be super useful. So if we can get any damage in on this Shadow Knight, he'll go down. Let's see what we can do to the second Shadow Knight. So it's going to be exactly the same. +3 against +4. Sorry, knocking over the features here. Okay, so our Knight has only rolled a 2, which becomes a 6. Archie has rolled a 12, which becomes a 15. Not going to do as much damage, but it does still do damage. He's going to go down to 11 wounds, because he takes 3 damage from that 15. So let me just see if I can find an appropriate dice to mark up his wounds. He is going to be down to 11. Now let's see what happens to the Gnoll fighters that are accompanying these baddies. So Yeah, let's do the null right here. Shoot +3 to fight +2. Okay, so Archie rolls a 15 to becomes an 18. That takes the null down to 2 wounds because it ends. He has an armor of 10, so it's only 8 damage, which takes him down to 2 wounds. Oh, sorry, he has an armor of 11, so he's got 3 wounds. That's disappointing. So he didn't quite kill the null, but has put him down pretty bad. So, and then we're gonna see what happens to the last null. Let's just get these dice rolls on camera. Oh, unfortunately, the last null has spiked his dice and will not be taking any damage. But Archie has softened up our most imposing enemies, so we'll see if we can't finish them off. For Bryn's second action, he's just going to dial up a shot into the wounded null. His musket, which, for those of you who don't remember, uses crossbow rules. There were no musket rules in the rulebook. He counts as using a crossbow. He's going to dial up shots, I think, into the null, because his shots are going to get half damage. Hold on, can he draw? Yeah, he can't draw a line of sight to the hyper-wounded Shadow Knight. The less wounded Shadow Knight is... he's unlikely to do meaningful damage to that Shadow Knight, so I want to try and thin out the number of enemies coming at us. So he's going to dial up a shot on that null. So he's going to be a shoot +2 to fight +2. He does do damage, or he does win that roll-off, but with how low he rolled, it's just not going to be enough. So it's not going to do any damage to the null, and his second action is just going to be to reload. And yeah, that's going to be it for the Ranger phase, because everyone has done their 2 actions. And so now we have to see what happens in the Creature phase. In the Creature phase, it's going to take this first Shadow Knight 2 actions to get into combat with Tywin. It's going to take, let's see, he's going to also take a double action move into Tywin. This Shadow Knight is just going to come running around, or limping around, with his 1 wound remaining. And this null is going to bring up the rear, like so. Our archers are going to come... our first archer here is just going to come into the hole. I already pre-measured the distance there, since I knew that was what he was going to have to do by the rules of the mission. So he's moved, and he's going to dial up a shot at the nearest enemy not in combat, because he's not. I don't think he would take a chance at hitting his own guys. So our archer here is going to dial up a shot on Bryn. Bryn is behind heavy cover with these crates, and the archer moved. So the archer is actually going to be at -1 to his shoot to Bryn's fight of +1. So let's see how this works out for him. So the archer still manages to tag Bryn with his arrow, but with his -1 modifier, it becomes an 11, which is exactly Bryn's armor. So apparently, to recap what's happened so far, a massive blast of a fireball has gone off right next to the pyre, scaring the bejesus out of this priest. The smoldering forms of the villains have surged around the pyre to come over here and get in and charge right onto the shield of Ranger Tywin as a completely ineffective musket shot fires off from Bryn. Then an arrow comes singing out from here into Bryn, but it just lands right on a thick part of his leather coat, and he's completely unharmed. Coming over here, this archer is actually going to have to double move just to get himself in the doorway. This archer is going to have to do much the same. He's just going to have to double move. He's not going to get to shoot this turn. So yeah, even for him, a double move only gets him to about there. So he is not in line of sight yet. So next turn he's going to have to move again. So fortunately, the rules of the scenario are paying off somewhat, but we'll see how long my luck holds. Over here, we have a pair of Shadow Knights already in combat with my Ranger, which is not what I wanted to see. But oh well, we don't always get what we want. And that brings us to the end of turn 1. I will have to see you guys at the start of turn 2. the start of turn 2, but before we head over to the board real quick, just to give you guys a quick look at what the mission has in store for us. Apparently, at the event phase, so at the end of turn 2, our heroes are going to look out into the darkness and see a flame leap up from a structure in the distance, realizing that it is the neighboring beacon tower of Tor Dargos that has been lit. But instead of the traditional flame of warning, it will be a phantasmal green glow. Clearly, additional forces of the Shadowdeep have struck at the neighboring towers. This is not an isolated incident or a random monstrous attack on one beacon, but in fact a coordinated offensive against the entire border of Alador. Oh, that's an encouraging thought. These battles are fighting all over the place. And when our heroes see that beacon go up, any surviving heroes who are still alive at the end of the turn will have to make a will roll, and we'll explain a little bit more how that works when it happens. But if they fail that will roll, they will gain the poisoned condition, which doesn't actually do any damage in this game system, but it does mean that for the rest of the game, a poisoned hero can only take one action per turn, which could be potentially devastating. But you will also notice the rest of our party has showed up. We have Damien, our man-at-arms, Thaddeus, the deadliest crow in the world, and unnamed henchman that we saved from downstairs, who now counts as having a sword, because that's what the rules said. And I figure it makes sense that he would have time to grab a weapon of some kind on his way up here. But with all that being said, we are going to start off in the Ranger phase, where Tywin is going to group activate with, we're probably going to go with Bryn and Damien. They're both within the 2-inch range. So Damien is just going to pop right in here to get into combat with that Null. Bryn is going to take this opportunity to dial up a shot on our hyper-wounded Shadow Knight, see if he can't put him down. It's going to be shoot +2 to fight +4, so I'm not loving his odds, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Although, if you've seen the previous games, Bryn misses quite a few more shots than that. Okay, so it's actually, I say it's not gone poorly, it's not gone well either. So he did technically hit, because they both get an 8, but that's not nearly enough damage to actually do anything, so his shot rings out loudly, slamming into the Shadow Knight's armor and completely bouncing off harmlessly as the runes engraved into it make a mockery of his technology. So that's his first action, Damien's first action. Tywin's first action is going to be to fight this Shadow Knight, who is no longer going to get the gang up bonus of his Knoll friend. So it's going to be dice even, +4 to +4. See if Tywin can do something here and get us some progress. No, not so much. Oof. So that's going to be a total of 24 damage. Ouch. Tywin's going to have to pop one of his heroic abilities to cut that in half to 12, which then goes to 0 because he has an armor of 12. So he did have to pop one of his heroic abilities, but he won't be taking any damage, so I guess we're lucky there, but he did lose that fight, which is not really what we wanted to see. But now we're going to see if Damien can't finish off that wounded Knoll and try to free up some room here. So he's going to take a swing at fight +3 to fight +2. That did not go well. So he's only rolled a 10, becomes a 13 to the Knoll's total of 19. So he's going to, minus 11 from his arm. He's going to take 8 points of damage, leaving him at 4 wounds. This is not going well, guys. But maybe the dice will come back in our favor at some point. But that does bring us to the end of our Ranger phase, where we have achieved nothing but burning through one of our heroic abilities and getting one of our guys grievously injured. Going into the creature phase, we have to do the closest ones first, so we're going to do the Null swinging back on Damien. Again, fight +3 to fight +2. Where things have gone a little better this time. Damien, the Null gets a 12, Damien gets a 21, becomes a 26, which becomes a rat kebab. The Null comes in here having been having successfully parried Damien's first blow to stab him in the side, rears back to strike him in the face with his spear, only for Damien to snap out a quick blow with his sword, taking out the throat of the rat, who suffers critical existence failure. And that leads us now to our Shadow Knight, the next closest baddie, who is going to be taking a swing at Ranger Tywin. Dice even again. Come on, Tywin. Be an example to your men. Okay, so Tywin kind of does. He does win that fight, but it's only going to be a 16, which gets cut in half to 8, which does no damage. But he does force the Shadow Knight back, but then the Shadow Knight just comes right back in and is still in combat with him. So they are still locked up. And next, our Shadow Knight. It's hard to say what he would do here. I'm guessing he's gonna just try to gang up on Tywin. And I'm not gonna choose to snap into combat with him because he's just too deadly. He's gonna be a fight +5 to Tywin's +4. Come on, Tywin, buddy. Okay, so it's not so bad. Tywin has lost that fight. Because his 7 become... Oh, actually, no, hold on. His 7 becomes an 11 with his +4. The Shadow Knight only gets a total of 8. So he actually loses. Never mind. So the Shadow Knight, seeing his pitiful minion fall to the floor, gurgling blood from Damien, decides to try and silence the brave ranger leading his men, only for Tywin to, having successfully rolled out of the way of the first knight's attack, springs to his feet and shield bashes the Shadow Knight back a pace. And since he's used both his actions, he's actually stuck out of combat now. So that does give us some hope, but we do still have to weather the archers. So this archer is going to take a shot at Anonymous Henchman number 1. He's just going to dial up a shot. Seeing the Shadow Knights clambering against the Ranger, he dials up a shot into one of the pesky menfolk who are trying to interrupt their sacred works. The arrow flies out at a shoot of +2 to a fight of +3. That becomes a 12 to his total of 9. So he does hit, but only causes 1 point of damage as he has armor 11. So it could have been worse. Could have been worse. He goes down to 11 wounds. Things could be worse. We're doing okay. And then we're going to have this archer right here dial up a shot at Damien. Damien's going to have a bunch of cover, because the way this works is you take a negative modifier for every piece of cover between you and your opponent. So he's just going to have to move slightly over to gain line of sight. So he's going to take -2 for that piece of cover, another -2 for that piece of cover, and a -1 for moving. So he's at -5, taking him to a total of -3 to his attack roll, to Damien's +3. So I'm liking Damien's odds here. Yeah, and the null rolled a 2, so it doesn't even matter. The arrow just kind of the null is clearly not very skilled, notches his bow, and immediately puts an arrow, kind of swing, this very poorly put together arrow just kind of immediately boomerangs to the side and into this wall. But we have a third archer who's going to move up, do the exact same thing, hopefully with the same results. Okay, yeah, and this null rolls a 9 with his -5 because he moved and all the cover. Yeah, again, the arrow doesn't even get close. Damien is not even aware that he's being shot at. The arrows are just plinking off this stone wall. So that works out in our favor. That brings us to the end of the creature phase, so now we are in the companion phase, where we can maybe start to turn the tide ever so slightly. And we're going to start... Ooh, this is actually kind of a tough one. We're going to start with Archibald dialing up a magic missile shot into the Shadow Knight, because we cannot have 2 of these guys. Well, actually, hold on. In the previous mission, in the previous scenario, I mentioned that you can shoot into combat. You just have to randomize who you're hitting. And I think that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to dial up a shot from his magic missile into the baddie here, into the Shadow Knight. So on a 11 plus, he's hitting Tywin. On a 1 to 10, he's hitting the Shadow Knight. He rolls an 8, so he hits the Shadow Knight. So he has successfully struck the Shadow Knight with his missile attack. I will actually have to turn off the camera here and go see what the stats are, because I have forgotten what the stats for his magic missile attack are. Be right back. Okay, guys, sorry about that little interruption. Had to look up the stats for the magic missile attack, which, as it turns out, is a +5 magical ranged attack, which if you'll recall, we've already randomized it. It has successfully targeted the Shadow Knight rather than Tywin, but let's see if it can actually do any damage. He's going to have a shoot of +5 to the Knight's fight of +4. Sorry, the Knight rolled a 16, which becomes a 20, but Archie has rolled a 17, which becomes a 22, which gains the crit bonus of another +5, so that's 27 magical damage. Doesn't get halved because it's magic, so Archie, being the hero we deserve today, has summoned the eldritch energies of the magic of the world, and steadies his hand and fires off a bolt of pure magical energy, which, as the Shadow Knight is rearing back to try and strike Tywin in the back, having just shoulder-checked the Shadow Knight, the bolt flies true, striking the Shadow Knight in the face, removing his head from his shoulders. The foul creature disintegrates as he collapses to the floor, and that is a dead Shadow Knight. Way to go, Archie. That I did not see that going so well. I thought you might put some damage on him. Archie, you a real one. I'm so getting you that third spell after this game. But with that being said, that is Archie's turn. Let's see what else we can do. We're gonna have unnamed henchmen from the garrison circle around, get into combat with our other Shadow Knight. He smells blood in the water, and as he gets into combat, Damien snaps in with him. Let's make sure Anonymous Henchman brings his wounds with him. But yes, with the gang up bonus, he's going to be a fight +4 to fight +4. He's going to see if he can't finish off this Shadow Knight and rid us of the single biggest threat on the table. Dice even, come on, Anonymous Henchman, I promise I'll name you if you do this. Oh no, that does not work out. In fact, that comes out to be a 22, comes to be 11 points of damage. Oh no, the Shadow Knight impales Anonymous Henchman number 1. He's not going to continue on the campaign either way, but narratively, let's roll to see what happens to him. He dies. Anonymous Henchman number 1 has been rescued from the bowels of Varden, only to come to the top and be immediately impaled on the blade of a Shadow Knight. Woe is him, a tale of tragedy of a hero of Alador struck down. That is heartbreaking, but the enemies of the world must be fought. But anyways, moving on to Thaddeus's turn. He's just gonna take a double move, which for him is 13.5 inches with his base move of 9. So he's just gonna fly right up against the wall over here, taking cover from the archers, trying not to draw too much attention to himself, and actually he's just gonna tuck in the corner, make sure he's not the closest to anybody. So he's just going to be right there in the wall, basically unattackable for the time being. So in the next turn, he can try to tie up this archer over here. But that does bring us to the end of turn 2, sorry. Which means we now need to make some will rolls. This could be potentially disastrous, so let's see how it goes. Archie, you've been on a heroic streak. Let's see, Sorry, I promised I would explain this a little bit. The way will rolls work, I don't think I've made too many of these so far in the campaign. The target number is 10. So I roll a d20 and add whatever the will stat of that model is. So Archibald has a will of +0. So he needs to roll a 10 or he gains the poisoned condition. Yeah, Archibald's poisoned. He rolls a 5. I believe that our man-at-arms, Damien, has a will of +1, so he needs a 9. He rolls a 4, and he's also poisoned. Tywin has a will of +4. He just needs a 6. Can he do it? No! So he's going to use his Hand of Fate reroll to try and fix that, which turns it into a 14. So he does manage to hang in there. Thaddeus has a will of +0, so he'll need a 10. Thaddeus. No, Thaddeus is poisoned. Fantastic. Bryn, what about you? No, Bryn rolls a natural 20. Bryn is like the opposite of poisoned. He's actually invigorated by the sight of the ghastly phantasmal fire from the neighboring watchtower. So, not great news. We now have 3 of our 5 remaining models poisoned and only able to take 1 action. But them's the breaks, I suppose. We're just going to have to roll with it, but that brings us to the end of turn 2, and I will see you guys in the next turn. Here we are, top of turn 3. Taking a quick sweep of the board, we have a pair of archers ganging up on us in this doorway. We have another archer over here trying to dial up some shots. And over here we have Damien staring in horror at the lifeless body of the tower guardsman hanging on the blade of the Shadow Knight, having just killed him. Tywin, seeing the fall of his fellow warrior, bellowing his rage, charges forward into the Shadow Knight. He will end this foe now, or die trying, and I'm hoping that's not famous last words. So, Tywin here is going to be swinging. He's got a fight of +4, becomes +5 because Damien's there, and this is going to be a group activation with Damien, just in case things go badly. So Tywin is going to have fight +5. The Knight fight +4. Oh dear. So this hasn't gone well. The Knight has won the combat, but Tywin is going to activate his parry ability, which gives him a +10, but he cannot do any damage with the attack. So he does, as he comes in, blinded with rage, the Knight smirks an evil smirk, kicks the guardsman off his blade, swings at Tywin, who barely gets his blade up in time to counter the surprise attack. Damien will have to try and finish this with his fight of +4 with the gang up bonus against the +4 of the Knight. It's dice even, so they would both take damage, except the Knight gets to have his. So Damien is going to take 4 points of damage. Actually, no, he's only going to take 3 points of damage because he has a shield. And he goes down to 2 wounds. Darn. But it is, and it's a tie combat, so he can't even push them back. So that did not go well. Oh dear, this might be the turning point. In a bad sense, this could go very poorly. And so we're now going to go into the creature phase, where the Shadow Knight is going to dial up another attack on Damien. See how this goes. Dice even. And Damien is taken out of action with the Knight rolling a 19, becomes a 23. Let's see what happens to Damien. 14 on the out of action result, so he is going to be just fine. He's going to make a full recovery. The Shadow Knight is deflected, and seeing Damien come in for another blow, just pommel strikes Damien in the face. And he collapses to the ground unconscious next to his dead comrade. Oh dear. So next on the creature phase, this Gnoll just going to run forward, try to get into combat with that pesky Ranger Tywin. He's going to have a fight of +3 with the gang up bonus against Tywin's fight +4. Oh god, Tywin, you need to step it up, bud. So it's going to be a tie. It's going to be, hold on, is it? Because 12 becomes a 15 for the Gnoll, 11 becomes a 15 for Tywin. Tywin only has an armor of 12, so he takes 3 points of damage, which will take him down to 15. We're just going to have to mark that up real quick. Bear with me if I can find the number 15 on this d20. Alright, so Tywin's going to go down to 15. However, the Gnoll only has an armor of 11. He'll take 4 damage, taking him down to 6. But now Tywin is stuck in combat with both of these guys. And then this archer, real quick, is going to dial up a shot on Bryn, looking to finish the job. So Again, heavy cover. It's going to make him a shoot +0 to Bryn's fight +1. Unfortunately, he does roll a 16, so he does manage to hit. Bryn catches an arrow right under his offhand. He's going to suffer 5 points of damage, taking him down to 7 wounds. Guys, this is not going well. This is going to be a hard-fought day. We'll see if we can make this work. So we're going to go into the companion phase, where we're going to start trying to play the objective a little bit here, and Archie is going to take his one action to move 6 inches towards the tied-up priest. See if he can't cut him down. It's going to be at least another 2 turns before he can do so. But Bryn here is going to, well, yeah, Bryn is going to try to dial up a shot on this archer, see if he can't get him out of here with his shoot of +2 to... Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the stat. Oh, I've been reading his stat wrong. He has a shoot of +3. I hope that hasn't been important so far. I don't think it has been. I think he's only taken, like, the 1 shot so far. But he is going to dial up his shot with his shoot of +3 into this fight +1 archer. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so he ends up rolling a total of 17 to the archer's 15. So he does successfully hit. He does actually aim down. He remembers, oh, you aim down the sights, and manages to put a bullet into this guy. The crossbow will get an additional +2 because those are the rules for crossbow. So his musket does an extra 2 points of damage. So that's going to be a 19. This archer has an armor of 11, so he's going to take 8 points of damage and be down to just 2 hit points. So you've almost done a thing, and then our last move is just going to be for the noble crow Thaddeus to fly in and tie up that archer. He unfortunately cannot make an attack action because he's poisoned and only gets 1 activation. So we'll just have to see how we can make all of this work. But with that said, we have reached the end of turn 3. Looking a little desperate for our heroes here, but let's see how this goes in the next turn. Right, here we are at the top of turn 4, and the game is throwing us another curveball, because in the event phase of turn 4, another phantasmal green flame is going to kick up from another neighboring beacon tower at Tor Hamel, where we will see more of that evil green fire kick up, another ritual, where our heroes will have to make another will roll at target number 12, or suffer a permanent -2 fight for the rest of the game. That won't kick into further scenario, into ongoing missions, but for the rest of the scenario, there'll be a -2 fight. So we actually kind of need this turn to go well. Tywin here he's not in range of anyone to group activate, so he's just going to have to do this all himself. He's going to activate and, dropped my dice there. He's going to have to dial in an attack against the Shadow Knight, who is somehow lingering on 1 wound. So Tywin's going to be fight +4 to the Knight's fight +5 with a gang up. But don't say that miracles don't happen. Tywin has cranked up a 20 to the Shadow Knight's 16. The Shadow Knight, with his +5, that goes up to a 21, but Tywin goes up to a 24, becomes a 29. So Tywin has cranked out a nat 20, getting 29 points of damage, which gets halved down to, that would be rounded up to 15 damage, just 3 points of damage, and with a last gargantuan effort, he slams the point of his blade through the chin gap under the helm of this Shadow Knight, bursting his blackened ichor out the back of his helmet. And before he disintegrates off Tywin's blade, his foe finally bested. The last of the Shadow Knights removed from Tor Varden. That is actually going to be all Tywin can do, but I'm not going to complain too hard about that. That brings us to the end of the Ranger phase, because Tywin is locked in combat. You can only make 1 attack per activation, so that's the end of the Ranger phase. On to the Creature phase. This Gnoll is going to howl with alarm, seeing the Anointed of the Shadowdeep struck down, and try to ram his spear into Tywin's back. It's going to be a fight of +2 to Tywin's fight of 4, and Tywin has used up all of his defensive abilities, guys. But it ends up not being enough. So as Tywin sees his friends collapsing around him, sees the ethereal flame burning in the distance, realizing just how dire the moment is, he has shoved his sword into the throat of his enemy, then seeing the gnoll coming in behind him, quickly twists the blade, yanking it out into a slash towards the oncoming gnoll, batting aside the spear as the gnoll lunges forward and is unable to stop himself and impales himself on Tywin's sword, because the gnoll has rolled a total of a 6. Tywin, with his +4, becomes a 20, which is, I'm not going to do all the math again. It's enough that the gnoll is impaled on his blade and collapses off of it, twitching and muttering his last fervent disbelief that how could the great masters have been wrong? He was promised glory, he was promised he could serve a higher power, and instead is simply cut low by this lowly man thing. But that brings us out of that portion of the creature phase, and over here, the fight of the century, a gnoll archer with fight of +1 against Thaddeus, who is fight +0. I'm hoping Thaddeus can pull something out here. He does. Wow, Thaddeus, again, I'm just going to say it. Thaddeus, the deadliest crow, and kind of the MVP of this party, has rolled a 10, plus nothing, stays a 10, but the gnoll, with his +1 is just a 9, so he loses a fight to a crow, stumbles back, and must now make a movement check of 15, so he needs to crank out a 9 or fall off. We're not going to use our hero dice for this, we're going to roll his less fine bad guy dice, so he needs to roll a 9 or better. With his +6 for his move, that would get him up to his target number of 15. But he fails. He rolls another 8. Oh no. Thaddeus, being the absolute champ that he is, pecks out the eye of the gnoll, who collapses backwards, falling off the edge of the tower to splatter his brains out at the base. Oh, things have turned around in a big way for our heroes. It was looking pretty touch and go for a second there. But with Tywin absolutely powering up, just beheading the Shadow Knight, impaling the gnoll fighter, Thaddeus coming to the rescue and literally is pecking and annoying this gnoll until he falls off a tower. But the creature phase is not yet done. We have 2 archers about to dial up shots on Archibald right over there, who has rather imprudently left himself exposed with only 1 piece of cover, so they're going to be shoot +0 to his fight 0. It's going to be just straight dice. Come on, Archie. Survive! Oh, man. The dice gods are smiling. We roll another nat 20 against a 7. So Archie, seeing these pair of wow, I just realized that's kind of funny. Archibald, is fighting a pair of archers. Huh. How about that? But anyways, Archibald sees that first arrow coming in and just sidesteps it with years of experience and says, guys, I killed a Shadow Knight. You don't get to hurt me. That's not how this works. This is video game logic now, guys. I killed a boss, the minions have to go away now. But that second shot might be coming in to prove him wrong. But no, with the gnoll rolling a 7 and Archie a 12, that second arrow just flies wide, missing him completely. The forces of the Shadowdeep seem to be a little psyched out, seeing the Shadow Knights go down. They don't seem to have the heart for the fight anymore. So we move on to the companion phase, where we're gonna let Archibald move up on there. Tywin could probably free the priest on his own next turn, and I do realize that with the torch, it kind of looks like Archibald's about to set this guy ablaze, but I promise he totally has good intentions and definitely isn't going to do that. Bryn here, it's hard to say what I should do with Bryn. He's got a bunch of cover between him and the baddies, so he's actually just going to take a double move of 13, let's see, he's got a move of 7 plus 3.5, so 10.5 inches. It's just going to bring him over here behind the... I was just going to bring him over to here behind this wall, so he'll still have cover while the archers will not. In the meantime, the last thing we're going to do is Thaddeus is going to take his one action to make a 9-inch move coming down the table to here. He is not gruntled with just killing one gnoll. He wants more blood. He wants to be the MVP. But we are at the end of turn 4, so these guys have to make another will test or become or suffer a -2 to their fight stat for the rest of the scenario. So Thaddeus, show me a 12. Thaddeus rolls an 18. Thaddeus is inspired. Thaddeus has tasted blood, and he will have his vengeance upon these monsters for killing anonymous henchman number 1 and knocking out Damien. So Thaddeus will not be suffering a -1 penalty, so in like 3 turns he might be able to fight. What about you, Archibald? Are you feeling bold and brave? Show me a 12. No, no. Archibald is feeling the opposite of bold. He got shot at by a pair of arrows. He is freaked the fuck out, and he is hiding, cowering behind this pyre. Not an inspiring sight for our priest. But real quick, battery's about to die, so I'm gonna have to hurry this up a little. Bryn, what are you doing? Bryn is -2 to his fight. He is freaked out by all that fire. He doesn't do fire. Tywin, show me an 8. No, Tywin is -2 fight. So yeah, the tower. They are a little freaked out by the other glowing tower. But with that, I'm trying to get this done before the battery dies. We have reached the end of turn 4. I'll see you at the top of the next turn. Alright, and here we are at the top of turn 5. Now having recharged my camera battery. And just giving you a quick sweep of the board, it is pretty well cleared out. We have killed all of the enemies except for these 2 gnoll archers who are just going to try and hold off my merry band of adventurers. Now, crucially, Thaddeus is poisoned. Archibald is poisoned. Literally all 3 of these guys are -2 to their fight score. Because, sure. Apparently the burning towers nearby have kind of psyched them all out just a bit. And as I say that, it occurs to me that's actually kind of understandable. There's a creepy, ghastly fire out there, and these guys have been fighting their way to stop a weird, like, creepy ritual. But we start off in the ranger phase, and actually, just checking real quick, there's not really any more curveballs for the rest of the game. We just kind of, at this point, it looks like we just keep going until everyone is dead. Yeah, so yeah, it says here that the scenario just continues until either all of the evil figures or all of the heroes are dead. There's not any more rules. Like, there was some rules here about how if the Shadow Knights were still alive, because it's turn 5, they would now have to be forced to make a beeline for the pyre to try and set the priest on fire. But the Shadow Knights are very, very dead, thanks to Archie powering up with his magic bolt spell, and Tywin finally remembering how to use his sword. But in the ranger phase, there's no one close enough to group activate with, so Tywin is actually going to activate what I think might be his last heroic ability. He is going to activate the dash ability, which is going to take his movement from a 7 to a 9, and he's just going to rush up to here. And then he's going to take another move, so it's another 4.5-inch move. He's just going to end up right here, out of the line of sight of our archers. Gotta remember to move his wound marker. But yeah, that's ranger phase, because there was no one nearby to help him. So our archers are just going to take a pair of pot shots over at Bryn, and we're going to hope he can survive. He's behind hard cover, behind a wall. Again, viewers at home, if you're being shot at, find cover. Just great adventuring advice here on Green Wing Gaming. So let's see. We're going to start with the archer closest to the door. He's going to dial up a shot. It's going to be shoot plus nothing because of the hard cover, but Bryn is fight -1 because of he got psyched out by the green fire. So let's see how this works out. Yeah, okay, so Bryn definitely lost that one. The 12 just stays at 12, so he has armor 11 and takes a damage down to 6. And we're just going to do it all over again with the other archer. But this time, our buddy rolls a 12, becomes an 11, but still beats the 3 from the archer. So the archer's starting to panic, realizing the heroes are coming towards them. They let off a pair of panicked arrows, one of which kind of nicks Bryn across the face. He now has a manly scar to mark this day. But going into the companion phase, Archibald is going to cut down the captive priest and just have him hide out here behind them. So he is now no longer on the pyre. He has been rescued, although there's nobody left alive who would have burned him anyway, but it's just nice to get him down off the beacon flames. We're now going to come over to Bryn, who's going to dial in a shot at the back archer. So it's going to be his shoot +2 to the fight +1 of the Knoll archer. So, okay, well, I think he's going to end up doing a little bit of damage. Or no, actually he's not, because his 7 becomes a 9 with the +2 damage. Becomes exactly 11, which is their armor class. So he rolled exactly enough to do nothing. So his second action is just going to be to reload his musket and hope he can be useful some other time. Meanwhile, Thaddeus, being the patient hunter that he is, just going to come over here with his one action and hang out behind the corner. So yeah, that brings us to the end of turn 5. These turns are going to go pretty quick now, but we have to finish off these archers if we want to have any hope of ending this scenario. So I will see you guys at the top of the next turn. Alright, turn 6, and we're going to try to make this one a quick one. We're coming over to the ranger phase, where Tywin is just going to come on in. His first action gets him into combat, and his second action is going to be to swing on fools. Now, because of the scary tower burning in the distance, his fight has been reduced from +4 to +2. So he's going to be +2 to the Knoll's +1. That doesn't really matter when you roll a 17 to the Knoll's 10. So his +2 becomes a 19. -11 becomes 8 points of damage. So that Knoll goes down to a 2. But again, because of the rules of this scenario, he has to roll an 8 or better to not fall off the edge. Oh, and he rolls a nat 20. So yeah, that Knoll has just he has just seen a bloodied and furious Tywin come sprinting across the table, across the tower, and just come swinging into the doorway to slash him across the face, cutting off one of his ears and leaving him bleeding from a massive gaping wound down his thorax, but is able to kind of cling onto the blade that is literally in him to not fall off the tower. So that is our ranger phase done. Into the creature phase. The Knoll is going to swing back on him, fight +1 to fight +2. Oh, and actually this time the Knoll pulls out a victory. He's going to get a 14. He's going to do 2 points of damage, taking our ranger down to 13 wounds. If I can find the 13 on this dice. Oh dear. You know what? We're just going to move this 13 here and... no, because I actually do need to roll. Here we go. 13 on this purple dice, which is a little hard to see, but no, you can kind of make that out in the light. Alright, but the other Knoll is not able to shoot. Well, you know what? I let Archibald randomize a shot, so he'll randomize a shot. On a 1 to 10, the Knoll will successfully shoot Tywin. On an 11 plus, he shoots his buddy. And of course, he rolls an 18. So this Knoll, seeing this tall, strapping bear of a ranger standing in the tower doorway, swinging his sword, impaling his buddy, pulls back his bow to try and shoot the ranger, but in the trembling of his hands, means he shoots an arrow into the back of his friend. So it's going to be a shoot of +2 against fight of +1. Fortunately, his buddy is so busy being jostled around, and he's such a terrible shot that even though he ended up shooting more at his buddy than the ranger, he even missed that and just banged it into the wall. So that brings us to the end of the creature phase, with the gnolls having done a little bit of damage to our ranger, and we go into the companion phase where Archie has done his bit. He has effectively... He killed a Shadow Knight. He did a bunch of damage to people with that fireball. He's just hanging out behind the pyre trying to not die. So Bryn's going to dial up a shot against the Gnoll Archer who's not engaged, and he's going to have a shoot +2 against fight +1. And of course, misses yet again. Bryn, seriously, you are the least valuable member of this team. And his second action is just going to be to reload. Thaddeus, on the other hand, an actually valuable member of this team, is going to move his 9 inches and get into base contact with the Gnoll Archer. Now, he's not going to be able to fight, because he only gets 1 action from being poisoned. But yeah, that brings us to the end of turn 6. I'll see you guys again at the top of the next turn, where hopefully we can finish this up. Okay, we're at the start of turn 7, hopefully the last turn of the game, if we can wrap this up. And we're right into the ranger phase, where Tywin, standing at the edge of this tower, is going to try to save his buddies. He is going to start by group activating with Thaddeus, see if they can't just gang up on these archers. He is going to start by swinging on the Gnoll Archer he's in contact with. He is fight +2 because of the creepy fire burning in the distance. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so they both roll 17s, but Tywin has a better fight score, so he actually wins that. It's going to be a 19. Yeah, it's definitely enough to kill this archer. So step 1 of the plan is going well. But Thaddeus now has to take his actions. He's going to be fight +0 against the Gnolls, fight +1. Let's see how this goes. Okay, it's a tie. But Thaddeus has an armor of 14, so he takes no damage, and he didn't roll high enough to hurt the Gnoll either, but the Gnoll has taken damage. Now, Thaddeus does not have to roll to see if he falls, because he can fly. That's actually mentioned in the rules, that if you can fly, you don't have to roll to see if you fall, because how would a bird fall? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So Thaddeus is going to come out of this unscathed, but if the archer rolls less than an 8... he's going to fall off of this tower. So, what does he roll? No, the archer cranks a natural 20 and stays stays alive. But, actually, no, Thaddeus can't drive him back because it was a tie. So, Tywin is just going to take his second action to get into base contact with the archer, bringing us to the end of the ranger phase and into a very quick creature phase. The archer is gonna swing on Thaddeus, so now it's combat even, +1 to +1. Oh, but Thaddeus does lose that combat and does get driven back. Again, he doesn't have to roll because he can fly. Well, actually, no, he doesn't get driven back because the rules specifically state baddies never do that. So nothing happens. Thaddeus doesn't have to roll because he can fly, and that's that. So we go into the companion phase, where Archibald and the priest just keep cowering, and Bryn is no longer going to be able to shoot, not that he was doing much with it anyway, so he's going to take a 7-inch move forward, and then another 3.5-inch move, making it to the door, so that at least next turn he can try to be of some limited use to us. But having said that, we're getting close to the end. 1 baddie left to go. Let's see if we can't bring it home. All right, one last quick turn. See if we can't finish this up. We're going to be group activating with everybody. So Bryn is going to just take his movement to come around, get into base contact with the archer, giving, at this point, Tywin has a double gang up bonus, getting back to his fight of +4 against the archer's +1. So let's see how this goes. Okay, and Tywin rolling a 19 against the archer's +4. So yeah, that's going to be, yeah, so 19 plus 4 becomes a 23, becomes a 28, becomes a mega dead archer. So Archer just gets ganged up on as, as Thaddeus is fluttering around, flapping in his face, cawing like a mad crow. Bryn reaches the door and just kind of shoulder checks into this Archer that's trying to use his bow as a quarterstaff, and then as he kind of holds the Gnoll's arms behind him, Tywin runs up and just jabs his sword into the Gnoll's guts, tossing his corpse off the edge of the tower. And with that, we have successfully cleared the peak of Tor Varden. We've saved the life of this priest, stopping the nefarious ritual, or at least this part of the nefarious ritual, even as our heroes look to the neighboring towers and see them glowing with dismal green flame. So that will bring us to the end of the mission. We're going to tabulate up experience in a second, but first, our next clip is actually going to be sharing you guys a little bit of lore that I think really just encapsulates what is meant to be like the narrative behind this desperate fight atop a beacon tower. But more of that in just a sec. The Night of Green Fire. Nearly a century ago, at the end of a brief war with Larenthia, the King of Alador ordered a line of beacon towers constructed along the border between the two countries. These towers were used once during a brief border skirmish, but became mostly redundant when a lasting peace formed between the two kingdoms. For the next 80 years or so, the towers were neglected, abandoned to the wear of time and the elements. When the Shadowdeep swallowed Larenthia, these towers now marked the edge of the known world. Although most were in poor shape, they were quickly reoccupied. A week after Larenthia fell, the forces of the Shadowdeep surged up and assaulted the line of towers. Swarming over the defenses, a tide of gnolls, undead, and evil men. On that horrible night, the beacon towers burned with a phantasmal green light, announcing to everyone within 30 miles that the Shadowdeep now controlled the border. Only in a few spots along that line could the light of Orangefire be seen, offering just a sliver of hope that the warriors of Alador were still fighting to hold back the darkness. And with that, we come to the end of our scenario, earning a total of 15 experience for dead gnolls, 20 for our dead Shadow Knights, 10 for rescuing the man on the woodpile, 10 for not letting the woodpile be burned, and another 20 for seeing the events and retaking Tor Varden. So yeah, 15, 35, 45, 55. So we earned the full 65 points for this game. But the desperate battle to keep hope alive in Alador has been won. And we will go over what all that means in the outro, but that is the end of our game. Alright, so there you have it. We have reached the end of this scenario and the end of Mission 2, the Beacon Tower. Tywin and his merry band have successfully thwarted at least part of the nefarious master plan of the Shadowdeep, giving a small beacon of hope to the people of Alador that perhaps resistance is possible. It was a hard-fought game. There was definitely a bit of time there when I was certain you all were about to see a total party wipe, and that was going to be a little bit embarrassing on the internet forever. But fortunately, the dice seemed to come back in my favor with a couple clutch natural 20s. And so we did manage to get through there. We actually only ended up losing Damien from in terms of being taken out of action. And yeah, the guy we rescued in the last game sort of got himself killed, but he died nobly, so it's fine. But Damien had rolled high enough on the out-of-action chart. He's going to be just fine. And we have not quite managed to level up, so no real improvements for Tywin. But we finally get to buy that new spell for Archibald, who kind of earned it. Not gonna lie, he let off some pretty clutch spells early on, dropping down, well, just straight up dropping one of the Shadow Knights and getting another one down to 1 wound. And just to give you guys an idea, that one Shadow Knight on 1 wound was enough to kill one guy, drop another one, and put some damage on my ranger and soak up a bunch of his defensive abilities. So had I not been packing that magic from Archibald, this would have gone like a whole other way. So I would like to credit myself with being some strategic mastermind, but I just got really lucky there. that's all that was. But with all that being said, I've had a lot of fun playing through this mission. I hope you guys had a lot of fun watching it. And in the next coming videos, we will play out the third and final of the base core rulebook missions. And after that, it will all be expansions. And hopefully at some point, we'll actually get to start playing some other games. But I hope you guys have been enjoying this, at least somewhat. That being said, I'm going to end this with the obligatory reminder to please like this video if you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe if you'd like to see some more. Leave a comment if you have any thoughts about how the campaign is going or what you would like to see in the future, or just what your thoughts are on Rangers of Shadowdeep. I would love to talk to some other people who have actually heard of this game. Everyone I know just kind of looks at me, what are you even talking about, Kevin? But then again, that's not even just for tabletop gaming. That's just how people react to me in general. But with all that being said, I would look forward to seeing you guys in some more videos in the future. But in the meantime, happy wargaming.
Onward to glory!